Welcome to the Color Timer podcast. I am your host, Vincent Taylor. This is the podcast where we speak to professionals who work with color. And today, I am speaking to Tom Huczek. He is the founder of Time and Pixels, the creator of Nobe Omniscope. I am very much looking forward to this conversation because I'm a big fan of this product. I've been using Omniscope for about 6 months and I just adore it. It's amazing. But Time and Pixels also has some other products as well, which I'm going to speak about. So let's go.
Take your seats because the hourglass is about to turn. We are entering the world of the micro podcast. Explore the craft, creativity, and science of professionals who use color to tell stories. Welcome to The Color Timer with Vincent Taylor.
Hey, Tom. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. I'm dealing with cold LA, which of course is not cold anywhere else in the world, but it's cold for me. So I've got a little remember to start the sand timer note down here because sometimes I'll start the interview and then I forget to do it. So before we go any further, we can start the game show, and away we go.
Perfect.
You have done a lot of interviews. I was doing some research, and you've done a fair few number of interviews, and it's not surprising because Time Pixels has brought out this incredible product, Nobe Omniscope. But I kind of want to go way back first to find out who you are and how on earth you got into this world.
Yeah, so. The journey was kind of long, actually. I'm a software developer by profession, and I have been doing it for many years now. I started a completely different field in banking sector initially, then in telecommunications, but my programming hobby projects always related one way or the other to some visual thing. So early on, I looked into game development, some graphics programming. So I always liked something visual that I could impact myself, that I could code some interesting things into the visual things on screen. So this was like my hobby early on. And then at some point, I picked up photography. And I think this was a turning point in my career because I became really passionate about photography. So I spent every minute, every hour that I could on getting out with my camera or working in Photoshop, trying to post-process my pictures, then learning about gear, about lenses, about the cameras, about all the gear. So
down the rabbit hole, yeah.
Yeah. So. This became like really big passion of mine, and I spent probably a couple of years really getting into all the details, everything I could basically. And some of this transitioned slowly into motion picture. At some point, I started taking time lapses. Then I started using DaVinci Resolve to color grade the time lapses, and then I became interested how to post process motion picture, not only the still pictures but video. So this turned into something else because I learned that you're doing something a little different here. It's not like applying 20 layers in Photoshop to make the picture look really good, but you had to approach it differently. So that on its own became interesting to me. Oh, this is different. So I need to learn why it's different and how to achieve something good looking, but another way. So I learned DaVinci Resolve. I started watching a lot of tutorials, how to use it, how colorists basically approach color in videos and so on. And at some point, my profession somewhat merged with my passion of photography and this video related things. And I found myself a small project to start on. And this first small project was basically a false color plugin. I've heard somewhere, I think it was a DP, saying that he relies on false color on set a lot. And he would like to have false color in post-production as well, to see the false color overlay in the grading suite with his colorist, because he speaks false color language on set, the contrast ratios, the exposure levels between the frames, and he was lacking the false color on screen in grading suite. And I thought to myself, okay, that sounds like fairly easy thing to implement. And this is the point when I started actually using my software development skills in the filmmaking world. And this is how basically the first product of Time in Pixels got created.
That's amazing. I love that you say, oh, it seemed fairly easy. I'm just going, yeah. Not to my brain. Yeah, you said like first product. Tell me about the products that Time in Pixels makes.
So on our website, you will see 4 products basically at the current moment. The main one is Nobe Omniscope, and which is probably, it's the only standalone application. And the rest, False Color, Nobe Display, and Nobe Color Remap are plugins, primarily for DaVinci Resolve, but most of them work also with Premiere Pro, Final Cut Pro, also for Photoshop, and some other platforms that support OpenFX plugins. So the False Color that I already mentioned was the first one, which is basically a tool known from cameras that DP uses. It's recently started appearing in software in various tools. Now we already have built-in false color in DaVinci Resolve, but when I created false color plugin, it was not there. It was probably the first software version of the false color that you could use on a computer. But it's fairly simple. It turns luminosity into some predefined ranges of color. So the idea, at least, was pretty easy and pretty simple. Then there was little enhancement to the false color that a lot of people asked me to do, to create like separate view of the false color, so you can work in DaVinci Resolve and without the abstracted view in your viewer. So you could see the original image in the viewer, but you could also see the false color as a scope on your separate screen. So I implemented that, and then I got a lot of questions. Can you make this preview of just the image without the false color? So basically creating external preview of your image. So that was basically removing the false color from that application, and this is how Nobe Display got created, with some extra features and enhancements down the line. And after that, I created Nobe Color Remap, which was slightly more complicated and more advanced plugin for DaVinci Resolve, where you have this hue circle and you can remap various hues and saturation on the grid. Right now you have this color warper in DaVinci Resolve, which is pretty much what it was back then when it wasn't available in DaVinci Resolve. But yeah, it was a really nice project for me to dive into color models, transitions between different hue saturations in different color models. So it was a lot of color theory and experimentation that gave me some solid base for the future projects after that.
Was that a coincidence then that a very similar thing now appears in Resolve, or you know?
I don't know. I don't really know. I can only.
That's fair.
But it got pretty popular, and a lot of colorists were saying that it's a great tool, but it's too slow for them because they use grading panel and they don't want to use mouse to drag the points to use the OpenFX plugin. So the native version will win always. So
yeah.
It just became reality. Unfortunately for me, but what to do?
This is a kind of a, basic 101 question, but I think it's really important because, we use scopes in our industry as colorists or as editors. So here's the question: why are scopes important?
Scopes are basically measurement tool, and they give you completely objective technical view. You might have a very pricey reference monitor and it's very accurate, but your brain can play a lot of tricks on you. And having scopes give you like not color by perception view or your mood. So it's sort of like absolute values of the image that you're working on. So I would say that's the main reason for using scopes. If you spend hours grading the footage, your eyes won't give you objective view on the image. So you can always rely on your scopes to check the levels, to check the saturation, the highlights, and the shadows. So yeah, I think it's indispensable tool in the colorist.
Oh, 100%. I remember, oh my gosh, years ago, I think I'd only been grading maybe 3 or 4 years, and I went to it was this little tiny post house, and they didn't have any scopes. And this was before Resolve had scopes built into it, I think. It must have been. And I remember going, that's okay. I'm not sure how much I actually use my scopes anyway. And I didn't realize how much, I'm glancing at them all the time. Subconsciously, you're just kind of glancing at them all the time just to check. And it was really hard to grade without them, to kind of just trust your eyes. Speaking of the past, so back in the day, I had my little Tektronix scopes in my suite, next to my little Poggle, and 20 years ago, I guess it was, and now we've got Nobe Omniscope. And here's a real nasty question: what makes Nobe Omniscope better?
I would say that Omniscope shares some of the benefits of the hardware scope. One would be to offload your main station, so you're not running software scopes on the same machine that you're grading, and scopes usually take some of your GPU processing power, so it's good to have them separately on a separate machine.
Yeah.
And also, you're monitoring external signal. You're monitoring the same signal that goes to your reference monitor. So there is no room for error, for misconfiguration within DaVinci Resolve or different NLE, like wrong color space that you're monitoring, or some, I don't know, layer that is not visible on your reference screen, but somehow gets into the scope preview in the software. So it's more independent from your workstation. And the benefit that hardware scopes don't have is basically constant improvement, constant updates.
Yeah.
The hardware scopes, they are not so that different from the scopes 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. The majority of the changes are like new video standards, high resolution, probably some of the HDR features, and that's it. And with Nobe Omniscope, we can implement any customer feedback, feature request, and have new version within a week or 2 weeks or a couple of months if the feature is really big. So Nobe Omniscope reacts to the environment, to the changing situation, to basically any idea that's interesting and it's worth looking into. And I would say that's probably 80% of the features in Omniscope are coming from the customers, from the community.
Well, it feels like, every other week I check and there's something new that's come with Omniscope, which is amazing. Is there any, I don't know if you can talk about this, but is there anything kind of in the pipeline that's coming up?
Well, there's our to-do list is huge, so we've
Right.
got
Is it?
tons of requests, ideas. So it's a matter of what's the most interesting and most valuable. Uh, we've got some really interesting features ready, but we cannot release them due to some licensing things not resolved yet. So hopefully we'll be able to announce some of that. But I think a very interesting feature that should be available very soon is SDI out support. So you'll be able to use your Decklink monitor card to output the signal out of Omniscope. So you can chain the signal out of Omniscope, or you can basically send out the scope.
Oh, I see. Right. I love. Recently, very recently, there's been the selection of tutorial videos that Daria has done that have come out, which are really great. Like they just very really nicely paced and just kind of really spell it out. And I love that. I love that you guys have gone to the trouble of just making these accessible for everyone, so everyone understands what's going on. It's really tremendous.
Yeah, I think it was really necessary, and what Daria is doing is really great. And I think she's like ideal person for this task.
Yeah, she is really, really good, and she just sets it. Do you work with her to do those, or is that something she's doing on her own?
We work on it together.
Yeah.
More of the work is probably on her side, but we talk about this and we shape each video together.
Yeah. I started off, once again, my time has run out. The 15 minutes goes so quickly, and I've got a whole lot more questions. But two of the things I just really quickly wanted to squeeze in at the end. I started off the interview by saying, you've done a lot of interviews, and I'm curious, are there any questions you wish someone would ask you?
Yeah, for example, a very interesting one would be the future in our field. What's coming to our field? And I would say that VR technology, as well as AI in every corner, I think it will have a big impact on post-production tools, and as well as the hardware that we're using for basically working with video. I think it will change a lot of things in the post-production pipeline.
Yeah, and this is the last thing I wanted to finish off with. I'm really impressed with the support that comes from your company. Can you tell me what kind of, if someone was going to jump into Omniscope, what kind of support they can get?
I think the best place for that person would be to go to our Discord channel. It's where everything happens, the bug reports, the idea request, the feature request, or basically you can ask any question there. So if I'm not there, there are many people involved in the project that might answer the question or suggest the solution. So it's probably the best place to start.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Mate, thank you so much. Thanks for. I know it's this tiny little amount of time to talk about so much, but it's a great to get an overview. And I mean, I'm a little bit biased because I think that Omniscope is amazing, and it's just kind of. I was off and on whether or not I should get it, and then a couple of colorist friends of mine who I really respect, they said, "Mate, once you get it, you won't go back," and it's absolutely true. I mean, it's a fantastic product. So well done.
I'm really glad to hear it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, mate. Thanks for chatting.
Thanks for having me.
Tom, thank you so much for taking time out to come on the Color Timer podcast. It was really, really great to speak with you. If folks want to know more about Omniscope or any of the other products from Time and Pixels, you can check out the show notes. Thank you for listening or watching, and like and subscribe and all that kind of stuff. It does help. Thank you to my executive producer, MixingLight.com. If you're looking at this or listening to this on their website, you already know what they do. But if not, check out MixingLight.com. They can help you with all things color. A really wonderful asset. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.
The Color Timer, a micro podcast experience.